Much has been written about the possible effects that movies and television have on the human psyche, culture, and society, with some suggesting avoiding the medium entirely while others downplay any potential dangers. If the average American, growing up with television, were to critically examine their upbringing, there's no denying that the various characters, shows, and movies on television played some role in shaping at least some part of their character. The ability of a powerful story to influence the thoughts and feelings of impressionable minds is no new phenomenon created with the television, though. The persuasive influence of a story and storytellers has been discussed and debated even 2,000 years ago in Greece by Plato. Way before electricity, Plato is to have said regarding creating his ideal state, quote, "Our first business is to supervise the production of stories and choose only those we think suitable and reject the rest. We shall persuade mothers and nurses to tell our chosen stories to their children, and by means of them to mold their minds and characters, which are more important than their bodies." End quote. If this great philosopher thought stories were so powerful then that they needed to be regulated, imagine how much more powerful stories are now that they are told using multi-million-dollar set designs and can be broadcast into every home in an instant. Author Thaddeus Russell, in his book A Renegade History of the United States, mentions how East German communist authorities blamed American cultural influences with creating a gang of armed robbers, saying the criminals succumbed to, quote, "the sluttish kitchen of American gangster movies, of crime stories, of murder, and other sensational trials," end quote. The power of film to persuade isn't lost on the American government, as several branches of the military and intelligence services work directly with Hollywood, which sometimes proves to be very fruitful. Author Ed Halter describes one such instance. Quote, "Top Gun, the 1986 Tom Cruise aerial vehicle, produced with the assistance of the Navy, reportedly increased enrollment by a ridiculous 400%. The Navy even set up recruiter tables at movie theaters once they realized what was happening." In the first part of this video series, instead of taking a macro view of this and using data and research from old studies and texts, I want to show some real-world examples of how television and movies have affected people, in their own words. One of the best examples to start with is the effect that the 1983 film Scarface has had on people, by their own admission. The quotes from famous or infamous people that credit Scarface for influencing aspects of their lives is so numerous that it deserves, and will probably receive, its own section in this series. But here are a few examples. Infamous drug kingpin Demetrius Big Meech Flannery, now serving 30 years in prison, discussed in an interview how the movie Scarface and its main character, Tony Montana, inspired him and most people around him.
It's just funny. I'm not saying that they're wrong because Scarface inspired me, but it's just funny how everybody who has money from all walks of life, the majority of them want to live a Tony Montana type life.
Comedian Felipe Esparza discussed his previous life as a drug dealer growing up in California.
Little pile.
But when I saw it later on, when I was like selling crack, in my neighborhood, it gave me a sense of power, bro, to watch that movie. Like, yeah, if we can make it, I can make it.
Hip-hop artist Cormega, who served prison time for drugs and armed robbery, recalls in his song Glory Days the influence of the movie.
I saw Scarface and got my first taste for power. I never knew grams of powder could make bags of dollars.
As previously stated, the number of references that we can find of people crediting the movie Scarface with influencing their life is numerous, but for now, we shall move on to some other examples. The 1972 movie Superfly had a similar effect on people, especially in urban neighborhoods. Judge Joe Brown discussed his experience watching the impact the movie had on his community.
You got that miserable ass movie Superfly, 1971, where it glorified cocaine, and this fool had Rod O'Neal with his half bald self, was wearing a toupee and letting the rest of his hair go down to his shoulders, driving a pimp mobile, selling coke, and you start getting lines of black folk 2 blocks long to go see that miserable ass movie, and within a short time, they had to bring it back, and that was in 72. I can remember being in D.C. working at a think tank, and I saw a line 3 blocks long to see that movie. And then everybody, man, I got to sell me some of that coke, man.
One of the first crack kingpins of California, Freeway Rick Ross, credits the same movie with influencing his decision to get involved with drug dealing.
But what I also noticed, Alex, when I was in prison, I did a lot of thinking back. And I can remember when, before I started selling cocaine, they started coming out with movies like Superfly and almost like priming you up for this lifestyle that you're about to get into. So when my friend comes and shows me cocaine, I'm interested because I saw Superfly.
Actor Simon Rex recalls how when the 1988 film Colors debuted, everyone in school changed up.
Well, I remember going to see that movie Colors when it came out in like 1989 or 90, whenever that Colors came out. And I remember the next day at school, everybody thought they were a gangster. Like overnight, it went from like, I remember there was like this rocker dude. There was a rocker dude named Alfredo Moreno, and he had like the mullet. He had a Metallica shirt. And then he came to school the next day after Colors came out, and he was like a B-boy, like overnight. And no one said shit because he'll beat your ass. But it was like that, that shit. Like people just like transform a character, and it was like, but they were badass. You ain't gonna say shit.
Wow.
Yeah, but I remember that was like the era. Like it made the turn. Like being a gangster was cool and mainstream.
Yeah.
Like late 80s.
While Boston-based rapper Benzino recalls the release of the title track of the same movie as, quote, when Boston went full gang mode.
And then once Colors dropped, Ice-T's Colors, that's when Boston went full gang mode.
This real-life influence of music will be the focus of a separate analysis. Of course, it wasn't only gangster films that had a direct influence on the actions of its viewers. There are all types of movies, targeted at all types of people, changing the behavior of all types of individuals. One seemingly mundane example is when Joe Rogan was interviewing comedian Tom Segura, and Segura said that he only did a particular degenerate sexual act because he saw it in a movie.
I remember doing that to someone in college. I only did it because I saw it in a movie, You know what I did? I got Hershey's syrup, and
comedian Joey Diaz recalls coming to America as a young Cuban immigrant, watching the alcohol consumption on television, and looking forward to mimicking the behavior.
I always wanted to drink. When I came from Cuba, all the TV shows, any TV show, Dick Van Dyke, any TV show you watch always had booze in them. And they always had bottles with no label on them. Like everybody's house in America had an alcohol tray.
Right when you walked in the door.
Right when you walked in the door.
It used to make me feel weird that I didn't drink.
Yes,
Like, why don't
yes. You grow up going, I can't wait till Owen comes over the house. And in those days, people didn't ask. Like, we're not like pussies, how we are now.
Right.
Like now, and let me get Stoli's short. In those days, people fucking, you walk in my house, Owen, I turn
Drink
around.
this shit.
Yeah, I take the glass, I put the ice cubes in, I pour it, and I hand it to you. You wouldn't ask me if it was whiskey or gin or scotch. You would just say cheers.
Yeah.
And fucking drink it. So who doesn't want to do that?
I want to do that.
I
want to do that right now.
Another interesting anecdote in relation to this topic comes from a man referred to as Psycho, a former inmate of the Florida State prison system. In an interview on the End of Sentence YouTube channel, he describes how when the movie Roots was being played on the main television in prison, it caused a sudden burst of black-on-white racial violence.
I walked down with my friend and I seen everybody in the first TV room. So I'm thinking, yeah, man, they got something good on, right? And I stepped in there and a bunch of dudes looked at me and I didn't see no white dudes in there. And I was standing by the door and I looked up and I seen on TV they were playing that movie Roots. And then not too long, and I kind of got an idea what was going on then. So I went back upstairs, right? Within 10 minutes, they were beaten. They seen a part in the movie where somebody was getting whipped or something like that, and they jumped on the police. They were throwing pool balls. Me and my homeboys, they used to give shovels to pick up all the canteen. We got the shovels, and we backed up on the wall. And when they come up, they were going after everything white. You know what I'm saying?
I can continue with some other examples, but I think the point is made. Film has the ability to directly change the behaviors and attitudes of its viewers. This is power. In later analyses, we will explore who has historically held and wielded this power and what aims they have sought to achieve with it. Stay tuned.